down to our last, but not least, most important perspective from Nick. It's a Dowswell, obviously a Dowswell show.
Hello, my name's Nick, and as you can see from this rather cringe-worthy photograph, I have a daughter with BBS. So tell us something you don't know. I hear you say, well, why else would I be standing here? Every year I've been to the conference, I've heard personal perspective from mums and people with BBS, and as uplifting, inspiring, and I'm sure you would all agree, emotional as it is, we've not really heard from a dad. So here I am. Most of you will probably know my daughter Maria, or at least heard her. She can never be accused of being softly spoken. She was born on the 8th of June 1993 at St Helier Hospital, Sutton, at precisely 13:06 p.m. And like all new fathers, it was the most amazing thing becoming a dad. This little bundle of flesh and bone, just amazing to witness a new life entering the world. As I stood there holding my daughter for the first time, I remember thinking, wow, this girl has so many adventures to have and opportunities to grab. Nothing would stand in her way. It's fair to say at this point that Maria has always been Daddy's little girl. Even now at the age of 24. She'll be so embarrassed. In the early years, Maria seemed like any other little girl, if a little clumsy at times. She had to wear glasses to correct a squint, and she had a couple of operations to try and correct it, with limited success. However, always in the back of my mind was something isn't right. And after an incident at home involving a tray of tea, we began the journey to where we are today. At first, we found ourselves at Moorfields Hospital, being told she might have a brain tumour. When we did get the clinical diagnosis of BBS, I didn't seem that surprised, as I'd always thought something was wrong, and wrongly assumed something could be done about it. After all, dads fix things, don't they? Unfortunately for me, the reality soon kicked in, and the difficulty of what I was facing began to sink in. I'd always tried to do the right thing by my family, but this was something I had no control of and didn't understand. In truth, and much to my shame, I have to say I didn't take it in, as I was in my world of disbelief. This can't be, not my daughter. I refused to believe it. How could this happen to me? Over the next months and years, I kind of felt distant from my wife and daughter as I tried to find reasons to blame, instead of supporting those I should have been. The strain in our marriage was sometimes unbearable for me. I felt a huge amount of guilt about my daughter because, through no fault of her own, she'd been touched by the BBS gene curse. To me, it was a sense of failure. We had let her down somehow. Instead of a bright future, what future, if any, was she to have? So much for the strong dad. Her teenage years were a bit of a blur as I wallowed emotionally in self-pity. But at the age of 16, a decision was made to send her to Wesk in Exeter, which is a school for visually impaired students. While there, she studied equine and horse care at a partner college, as she had always loved horses and indeed rode at stables when she was younger. I have to admit, seeing her on a large horse used to scare me. But she seemed to take it all in her stride, no pun intended. Little did I know that the decision to send her to Exeter was once again to change things forever. Her time at Wesk, although sometimes difficult, was to change my thinking, that just maybe there could be a future for her and that she could achieve things I had thought were not possible. One of my proudest moments was seeing her graduate in her equine and horse care course alongside all the other able-bodied students. This, for me, was something that for many years I thought would never happen. Her confidence grew and her abilities to look after herself and do things herself increased. Although it wasn't all plain sailing. Maria to everyone else might seem lovely and calm, but like a sleeping volcano, she can sometimes erupt with destructive emotional consequences. Maria is now 24 and living in a flat on her own in Exeter, whilst holding down a part-time job. Things I doubted were ever going to be possible. Far from letting BBS stop her, she has made it work for her, almost pushing her to break barriers and misconceptions about her condition. When I think back to the early years and how having a daughter made me happy and full of hope for the future, to thinking afterwards, after her diagnosis, that there might be little hope and a future, I feel sadness and regret for the way I felt, immersing myself in feelings I should never have had. You see, the modern man should be strong and supportive of his family, but instead I just fell apart. As I stand here today, I've never been more positive about the future because my daughter constantly surprises me by what she says and what she does. As I've already said, she has faced challenges but has always dealt with them her way, and as a father I couldn't be prouder. Even though she has this condition, and nothing stops her, and I shall finish with this thought. At one time I used to think, how am I going to turn her life around for the better? Well, Maria, thank you. Because of your strength and positivity, you have instead turned mine round. Thank you.